is I'm going to start with like going back to the main purpose of Ramadan. So where Allah speaks about Ramadan in the Quran, what is it that Allah tells us to keep an eye out for, basically? Yeah, so we're going to go to that verse. Then obviously you probably figured out the answer is taqwa. So we're going to look at taqwa and the MIQ for taqwa. Some of you might know what MIQ stands for, you might remember, but even if you don't, we'll come to that. Then we're going to look at taqwa and which parts of our lives it can actually apply to. And what this will do, I think this is a really useful exercise because it kind of gives us a nice little summary of which parts of our life Islam can apply to. So it gives us a good overview of Islam, kind of thing. Because sometimes we can get like a bit overwhelmed sometimes. Like some of us, we might think that Islam means like going for jihad. Some of us might think it means like looking after your parents. Some of you might think it means like praying 5 times a day and like always praying and praying and praying and like being really prayerful kind of person. Now we might not be too sure what it exactly means, but we know like it kind of affects our relationship with our Creator in some ways. And basically we'll come to that. So when we figure out what taqwa applies to, it gives us a nice little summary of Islam. Then we'll go on to dua, because obviously the amount of taqwa you have affects the power of your dua to a lot of extent, and we'll look at that. And then we'll move on to the practical bit where we start reading some Quran, and we do that dua usually at the end for light. Can everyone hear me alright? I've got the windows open today, so it might be a bit background noise.
Yeah.
Is that right, yeah? Assalamu alaikum Salman, good to see you, man. Very good to see you. Murad, what are you saying? You used to, Alhamdulillah, man. I'm good, man. Murad, you used to put your camera on as well. You've gone a bit shy now. But anyway, Anand's not got his camera on either. So no worries, man. No worries. Alhamdulillah, good to see everyone. Nicola's coming, Rashad's here. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Asmil's here. But that's just a summary of what we're going to go through today, yeah? So that's what we're going to do. So we'll start with this verse, which you guys can see. So this is the verse. And we went through this verse. We all read this verse together and we kind of practiced reading it properly as well. But some of you might not have been here. But this is the verse which really gives us everything that we need to know about Ramadan. Now, in the Quran, Allah speaks about Ramadan deeply in only one place. So I think like a couple of weeks ago, we went through this. So some of you who are here, you'll remember these verses. Some of you might not remember, that doesn't matter. This is the main verse where we get the real crux of what Ramadan's about. So, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. So here Allah speaks about why fasting is made compulsory. Yeah, so most of you will probably know the reason. So the answer is basically in this end bit. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Who knows the translation of that? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Gee, people. I'm sure some of you do, man. Have a guess. It's not that hard.
So that you could obtain taqwa.
Good, mashallah. Very good. So لَعَلَّكُمْ, so that, kum is referring to you guys, as in all Muslims. لَعَلَّكُمْ, so that you guys, تَتَّقُونَ. Tatta also has the meaning of you as well, but tattaqun, it comes from the word taqwa. So tattaqun, so that you may attain taqwa. Gee, so we all know that taqwa is the main thing, yeah? So just to recap a bit about what taqwa is and how we can understand taqwa, I wanted to go a bit deeper into taqwa because we might have kind of forgotten, and also it will give us a bit of a deeper understanding. Now, what we went through, when we went through the tafsir of this bit of the Quran, we went deep into that verse, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. We figured out that the main purpose of Ramadan is taqwa. That's important to understand first off. Yeah. And then after that, we went into the verse after that, yeah, which is where Allah speaks about how there's a few days which are necessary, and there's kind of a leeway in that verse. Yeah, so Allah speaking about early Islam, when it wasn't necessary for Muslims to fast for the whole month. Ramadan wasn't really fasting at that time. So it was kind of an easy way of fasting. Yeah. Then after that, Allah brings another verse where He speaks about Ramadan being the month of the Quran. And then He mentions the harder version, which is where Muslims have to fast for the whole month of Ramadan, 30 days, 29 days. And also Muslims aren't allowed to pay themselves off if they can afford it. So basically it goes from only fasting for a few days to fasting for the whole month of Ramadan. It becomes a lot harder. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So we have one verse where Allah speaks about fasting, but it's only a few days and you don't have to do it. You don't even have to do those few days. Then we have the next verse, which is where Allah speaks about everything becoming a bit harder. Now you have to fast for the whole month, and as well as that, you're not allowed to pay yourself off. There's no leeway anymore. Yeah, so we go from ease to hardship. But then in the hardship verse, after Allah says that it becomes harder, after Allah says you have to fast for really long, Allah says this: يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. So that's the verse. You can see it on the screen. And despite everything becoming what we call harder, Allah says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ. That Allah wants. What does yusr mean? Gee, who was here? Who remembers this verse? يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you and doesn't want وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Gee, who remembers? What does usr mean? It's pretty obvious, man. It's the opposite of yusr. Gee, people. Come on, in the chat, everyone should be able to answer this question. It's such an easy question, man. Gee, so what does usr mean? Gee, people, come on, people, man. Hard. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian, for saving everyone else, man. Gee, hard. Can everyone else write hard in the chat, please, just to make sure that you're actually awake, and you're actually paying attention. So open your chat and write the word hard inside. So I've already told you the answer. You just need to write it down, man. Come on, people, quickly, man. Everyone, otherwise I'm going to be stuck here waiting for you to type hard in. Come on, people. Gee. So we're doing the verse, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you and doesn't want hardship. Now this is a bit strange and paradoxical, because just before this Allah has made Ramadan so much harder. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So this is why it's a bit strange that Allah makes fasting hard, makes Ramadan hard, and then says that He wants ease for you and doesn't want hardship for you. So this again reinforces the actual point of Ramadan and the point of our lives. Like, the point of our lives isn't necessarily to have loads of fun. Sometimes the training which you go through will actually be hard. It will be painful. So fasting for 29 days isn't as easy as fasting for a few days and just chilling out. So the hardship, Allah says that you're going to have to go through hardship. But this in reality is Allah giving you ease and Allah saving you from hardship. Because وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ, you complete the period. You complete the period of the whole of Ramadan. And then لِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ, then Eid comes and you praise Allah. But by going through a longer period of actually 29 or 30 days, this is what's actually required to train you up. What are we trying to train ourselves for? What are we trying to achieve? What's the point of Ramadan? Gee, again, on the chat, people, what's the point of Ramadan? What are we trying to achieve? Ian's already answered the question to everyone. But, good, thank you, Ian. Taqwa, thank you, people. Yes, everyone should be awake, man.
You know the answers on the screen, right?
Yeah, I know, but you guys need to be able to say it. If you can't say it with your tongue, then it means you're probably a bit confused. Like, you should be active enough to like open the chat and type in, so you can participate, man. You can feel involved in what's going on. Anyway, man, some of you just still lying in bed half asleep, daydreaming like about other things. So it's important to know that you're here. Thank you, people, man. Very good answers here. AJ, it makes it hard for 30 days so that it's easy for the other 335 days. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you, AJ. That's really well summarized what we're trying to say here. That why does Allah say that? Make something compulsory on us and then say that this is what's going to sort your life out. And AJ has summarized it. So for those of you that are reading AJ's answer, mashallah, everyone can be proud of having AJ in our midst to give us such deep insights. It's like a challenge to everything. Well done, Salman. Very good. So I think people are getting the general idea. But it's good if you try and take your own understanding and put it into words. Because if you don't do that, it's kind of just in your head and it's not as precise as maybe it should be. So being able to take what we're trying to understand here and put it into your own words will mean that you'll understand it at a much deeper level. Because we're going to speak about abstract things here. We're going to speak about things like taqwa and things which, like, they're feelings and we don't always know exactly what they are. And especially when we're talking about taqwa, which is what we're going to come on to, that's what really helps when you are able to put it into words. So I'd really recommend for everyone, try and really keep using the chat. Yeah, make sure you're putting your ideas in there, your insights in there, what you're learning as we go along. And that way, even like you'll get quite excited about it. You'll be like, wow, I'm going to share this with Imam. Imam Habib's going to read my input. So she'll be excited that like, you're going to say something clever, so I can read it out to everyone. Anyway, man, so Allah says that He wants ease, not hardship, because in reality, by us putting ourselves through pain for 30 days, we actually develop our taqwa to a much higher level. So we actually achieve the point of Ramadan. So if we go back to this verse, my mouse works, we actually get taqwa. So now when we go into our normal lives, it's actually easy to just operate with a higher level of taqwa, a high level of awareness of Allah. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. Then Allah finish this verse off, وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. When you realize this, when you look back at the segment of Ramadan, you actually are grateful for all of your achievements. So it's good to be in touch with your achievements and with your piety, with how close you are to Allah, with your taqwa. It's very good to be aware of that. And a sign of being aware of that is if you can write about it in words. And this is a very big sign. If you struggle to write about what your taqwa feels like, then it's just a sign of a little bit of how in touch with it you are. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you struggle with that, which is probably normal, it means that by taking the challenge of trying to put it into words, you'll understand it on a deeper level. And when you start understanding on a deeper level, you'll be able to get the insights that you need at a deeper level. Because it's not about like me teaching you about taqwa. This is like about you learning about your taqwa. Your taqwa is different to my taqwa. Like I feel mine a bit differently to you guys. It's not about me preaching this to you. It's very important that you are aware that this is your taqwa. You should have that autonomy. Isn't it? Autonomy is important. Does everyone remember what autonomy is? It's one of our intrinsic motivators, which will get us going when we're in charge of our own spiritual journey. Yeah, we're not just relying on somebody else to solve the problem. We don't just go to Imam Sahib and say, please make dua for us, and we think that we're all blessed and all the problems are solved. It's important to realize that it's your journey and you've got so much control over it. It's not really about me at all, to be honest. It's about you and Allah. So it's important to realize that Allah will help you on this journey. Anyway, man. So we have MIQ for taqwa. So we're looking at taqwa and seeing how is taqwa showing up in our life. So there's 3 important questions. Whenever it comes to something like this, which you're a bit unsure about, 3 questions are very important when it comes to spiritual activities. Number 1, what is it? What is taqwa, for example? And some of you already know what taqwa is. In fact, all of you know what taqwa is. We've been talking about it for so many days. But also, at the same time as knowing, there's a level of progress which we also need to make. There's no point saying I know, so therefore I'm not going to learn anything about it. Does that make sense? So it's very important to learn about taqwa again, go through the definitions again, and see what it's really about. Yeah, so it's important to bring a beginner's mind, despite also being very knowledgeable about taqwa. So what is taqwa? We'll go into that. We'll answer that question on the next slide. But you can start thinking about it. You can start like using your brains. So, thank you, Salman. But also, one of the signs that you kind of think you're not bothered about like using your brain is if you're typing on the chat. Because if you're like thinking, oh, people might start judging me if I put my thoughts on the chat, and they might think that I'm wrong or I'm right. But it's actually kind of, that's the whole process. So alhamdulillah, it's really important to figure out that how we can get how in different ways we can actually put ourselves in a learning state. Does that make sense? So one of the main ways is asking the right questions. What is taqwa? And then pretending you don't know. Let's pretend we don't know what taqwa is. So we can now actually put ourselves in a state of learning about what taqwa is. So we're going to get onto that on the next slide. How much do I have? So what does it feel like? This whole conversation we've been having all this time, it's been to try and get us into a state of feeling our taqwa. What does taqwa feel like? What does it mean to have an awareness of Allah? Gee, people. So now asking yourself, what is that for you? So ask yourself that question. This is an important question. And then obviously once we get a bit more in touch with our taqwa, we're able to kind of figure out how can this taqwa be nurtured and developed and strengthened, especially in the month of Ramadan. Gee. So we do this little thing here where we use a speedometer. And it's very, very useful. So, because when we're working with our spirit, sometimes symbolism works better than words. So, just understanding that, for those of us that have now got into this feeling, what is my taqwa right now? You should all hopefully have got some kind of feeling coming up. What does it mean to be aware of Allah? What does it mean to know that Allah is watching me? What does that mean? Now I understand most of you can't put that into words. So now there's the feeling though, isn't it? So what is that feeling? And when you feel that, like what is that in terms of like, how much is that? Is that strong? Is it weak? Can it be made stronger? Can we feel that maybe from where it is at the moment, we can maybe push it more in the positive direction, get it even stronger maybe? And just let go of your brain for a minute and just imagine a speedometer. So this is a visual exercise, yeah? So imagine like, for those of you that drive, your car has a speedometer, so maybe use that as a basis. And on the left side, we're going to have 0, and it's going to go to 100. Yeah, so it's a gauge, basically. Yeah, so 0 to 100. Now, when we ask ourselves, where is my taqwa? What is my awareness of Allah? Now, use that gauge to give you some kind of number. So allow the gauge to kind of flip, black and flop, and you get a number. Yeah, it might be 40, it might be 50, it might be 0, it might be 100. And that might be what you feel your taqwa like at the moment. And hopefully, if it wasn't 100, most of you will feel that it's somewhere on that gauge. Now you'll see the trajectory of where it kind of needs to go to get to 100. Does that make sense to people? Or is that just all garbage? Gee people, is that making sense? Yes, has everyone managed to do the G? Speak on the chat please. Who's managed to imagine a speedometer, ask themselves the question, where's my taqwa, and then a number came up for them? Yes. Who's actually following along here? And who's sleeping? Let me call some names out, man, wake you up. Madhu, assalamu alaikum. Did that make sense? Gee. Murad Ali, did that make sense? Brother Asmil, did that make sense? Brother Rashad's very quiet nowadays, man. How are you, Brother Rashad, man? Nice to have you. But anyway, didn't make sense. Assalamu alaikum, Rashad, man. You turned your mic on. Alhamdulillah. Nice to have you. Oh, alhamdulillah. Thanks for sharing. Shehzad, what are you saying, man? And Nadeem's here. Colchester Islamic Community Center, alhamdulillah. Who's that? Very nice to have you as well, man. Very nice to have everyone here. So we're just getting in touch with our taqwa a little bit. So now a number came up for you, you should hopefully now see a trajectory to 100. Like where is my taqwa going to go? Where do I actually want my taqwa to go? And realizing that, that's something which we can work on in this way. And maybe asking yourself, like, what is it that we need to do in order to improve our taqwa? So I think what we're going to do now is answer the first question, which is what is taqwa? But I haven't put it on the screen, I forgot to put the slide. But I think we've done this a lot, so we should all have a good awareness of this. The two main aspects of taqwa, one is the mindset, and the other is how that mindset leads to certain actions. Yeah, does that make sense to everyone? So the mindset is kind of the awareness of Allah, which is that feeling that we get, the fact that we're in touch with Allah. We know that Allah is watching us. So that's what taqwa kind of is. But now when we have this awareness of Allah, we're kind of able to take this beyond just our mind. Now it comes into our life. So in Ramadan, this comes very easily. We can all visualize it. When we decide that we don't eat and drink for the whole day, that's our taqwa kind of in action, because we feel like eating, like we kind of want to drink water, most of us, but we don't, because we have an awareness of Allah. Yeah, we have taqwa. So that's what allows us to do these actions. Now, what's on the board now is when we understand what taqwa is and where taqwa applies, we can have a good understanding of how Islam applies to our life generally. Yeah. So there's three main sections. One is how Islam applies to you and your own relationship with yourself. The second section is how Islam applies to you and your relationship with Allah. And the third is how Islam applies to you and your relationship with the people around you. Yeah, so there's three connections, there's three relationships. It's good to be aware of this. So your connection with yourself, your connection with Allah, and your connection with the people around you. And taqwa will apply to all three of these. Yeah, and this is where Islam really gives us a lot of guidance in how to kind of live our lives. Yeah, does that make sense? Does anyone want to dispute that? Does anyone not agree with that and think maybe Islam talks about something which you've missed? I mean, I might have missed something, you know. You can mention something else if you want. Okay, but this is it kind of covers everything. Every kind of guidance we get from Islam is covered within these three areas. So connection with yourself obviously covers looking after yourself, looking after your body, looking after your hygiene, looking after your mental health. Also that kind of means that you have to look after your spiritual health as well, which kind of overlaps into the second section. But this is kind of looking after yourself. So we've done a lot of looking at the kind of food that we eat, the exercise that we do, whether we sleep properly or not. But that's one key area where taqwa is always going to be applied. Like when it's time to decide what to eat, and there's food which we feel like eating, even though we know we're not meant to really eat it because it's not very healthy. And that's where taqwa and the awareness of Allah will come in. Yeah, when it's time to do some exercise and actually go for a walk or a jog or a run or do some press-ups, it's like hard, isn't it? You just can't be bothered. So taqwa is what's going to force you to do it. Like Allah's given you a job to look after your body. So now you're going to be able to push yourself beyond that. So that's where taqwa comes in. Same with sleeping. Like you don't feel like going to sleep. You feel like watching Netflix. So, or watching videos on YouTube. So the time you're meant to be going to sleep, you're just wasting that time. So again, taqwa can come in and say, no, you actually need to wake up on time and do something important. So taqwa can force you to go to sleep on time. And obviously taqwa at time of waking up is super powerful, because like when it's time to wake up, we just feel like snoozing and not waking up on time and just sleeping, and then just getting our phone out and then answering some messages and then watching videos, and then we've wasted like 3 hours just in bed. So taqwa will be like, no, you're not allowed to look at your phone. Get out of bed, do something useful with your life, and then maybe like you can look at your phone later or something. So taqwa, it really helps us actually control our own health, our own mental state. Yeah, so taqwa is really applied there. Taqwa is then applied to spiritual practices. Now when it comes time to connect with Allah, then the same problem comes. Like, why we can't be bothered? It's a bit boring, man. Let's just leave that out for now. So now taqwa comes in. So taqwa is how much you have an awareness of Allah. So if you have an awareness of Allah and you know that Allah has told you that it's a clever idea to pray to Him 5 times a day, then you think, okay, that's something which I need to do. It's quite important. So you'll be able to do the spiritual practices, which is not primarily praying 5 times a day. Now in order to pray properly, we need to have a certain amount of concentration. Like you need to be able to concentrate from the time. You can't just come there and start jumping up and down and then run away. There's no point to doing that. You need to actually come into a connection with Allah. So that requires doing wudu, ablution properly. Then finding like a clean place to go and pray. Then maybe taking a few breaths before you pray to make sure you actually are concentrating, and that your mind isn't going to think about all these random things which are going on in the world. And then you actually try, and maybe pre-salah you practice Surah Fatiha, so you can actually recite the Quran and the stuff you do in your prayer. You maybe do something separate so that you can actually concentrate in your prayer. Does that make sense? Maybe you'll come to this class so that you can actually practice your Quran and reciting things properly and like the way they're meant to be recited. So we're actually ready for prayer when it comes. And then like we've done in this class, we've done a lot of attention on dua and gratitude. And that's kind of all of these things, they help us connect with Allah and they help actually enhance our taqwa. Everyone got that? Yes? So that's spiritual. And when we think of Islam, we might primarily think of our connection with Allah before we think of connection with self and those around us. So some of us might just think of Islam as this. Yeah? That's quite normal. But relationships obviously have a lot to do with Islam as well. The relationship you have with your neighbor, there's a lot of guidance the Prophet ﷺ has given us there. The relationship you have with your spouse and like how much you smile, whether you say Assalamu alaikum, whether you are grateful and actually thank people for what they do, and the relationship we have with the wider community. Like, do we contribute to the community or do we kind of just like live off benefits kind of thing. Like, it depends what kind of person you are. But that's these are some of the key taqwa areas. So kind of even when we think about these, we realize it actually affects our whole life. The amount of consciousness you can bring of Allah, if you can bring it into every decision of your life, it'll start changing your whole life. You'll start thinking about everything you do. Start thinking about what time you wake up in the morning, what you do when you wake up in the morning. But that's kind of what we learn. But especially by doing dua and realizing, identifying the segments, we kind of got to grips with that. So that was really useful. I have any questions about that? Okay, good. But seeing as we're just coming off the back end of the dua course, this is a really nice verse. So this is the verse which comes at the end of the place where Allah speaks about Ramadan. So here Allah says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَ, He addresses the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. So he says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, whenever my slaves ask you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, I'm always really close to them. Like, there's not much distance. Like, it's not like a big, like, complex thing to get in touch. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ, I respond to every dua of a caller. Whenever somebody calls, I respond. In fact, Allah says, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ, I respond to the call of the caller. إِذَا دَعَانِي, and he actually brings the condition, which is when he calls me, afterwards. So he shows his eagerness to actually just be present with you. He's always there with you. And you're إِذَا دَعَانِي, whenever you feel like calling him. So whenever you call him, he'll be with you. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي, so these people should get in touch. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي, and they should believe in me. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, and when they start doing this, start getting in touch, they will be guided. This is what will guide them. So this is the verse which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings at the end of Ramadan. So that's why now we've finished with dua. It's important to be aware of how powerful that course was, of getting in touch with our segments, getting in touch with what help Allah will give us. And the reason dua is so powerful is because when you start making dua and getting your duas accepted and start seeing your duas manifest, you'll see how, you'll understand how Allah actually operates. How does Allah actually work? Because Allah is like, He deals with your spirit. It's not the same as the way which things happen in the physical world. Does that make sense to everyone? Like when you make dua, it doesn't happen immediately. Like it wouldn't be very clever. Like imagine if I made dua, like I want a pink elephant, and then a massive elephant would just come and destroy the camera. Like you wouldn't be able to hear me anymore. So obviously dua doesn't, it wouldn't even make sense if dua made work like that. But there's a way which Allah works, and there's a way which Allah responds to your dua. And like there's rules to it, obviously. Like I can tell you the rules to how to make dua, and when you start learning the rules, you become much better at making dua. But at the same time, the deepest way which you learn about how Allah responds to dua is actually when you make dua and get it accepted. So you find something you need help with, you find something you want to improve, you find something you want to change about yourself, and you ask Allah to help you do it. And when you do that, that's when you actually be aware of how Allah shows up. How does Allah accept du'as? So that's why we went through that course for 5 days. And for those of you that didn't get a chance to join us, it's on YouTube, it's on my YouTube channel. So it's a 5-day course. And what it does is it forces you to make your dua for a segment of your life, for something you're actually doing physically. So you see why you're making the dua, how Allah is going to help you in the dua. And then you, at the end of the segment, you look back and appreciate how much Allah helped you. And obviously this is really important because dua depends on your belief. Yeah. So if you believe that Allah is going to help you, then Allah is going to help you. If you almost half don't believe it, then it's going to struggle, that dua is going to struggle to show up in your life. So it's really important. And we kind of understood why Allah gives us who you are and who you believe you are. If you believe you're worthy of Allah's help, Allah will give you His help. And it doesn't necessarily give you what you want or what you think you want. The problem is we don't actually even know what we want, which is a big problem. Yeah, we've done this yesterday. Like if I ask you what you want and you say, and you start rattling off a list of things what you want, then we start looking a bit deeper. We realize that those are not the things we want. If money is one of the first things which we think we want, then we start thinking about it, like what are we going to do with that anyway? Then we think we want power, we want to control everything. But when we look at the parenthood paradox, which is one of the things that we really want, is to become a parent, is to become a father, is to become a mother, then we realize, okay, so what about this thing on my list of things which I want? It doesn't always make sense, like controlling the world and having loads of money and being in charge and power. We realize, like, do we really just, because we don't want everything to be so predictable. We usually want surprises. And we went into this exercise yesterday, that the fact that we delude ourselves by thinking that we want power and money, when in reality, we actually have to ask ourselves this question, that what is it that we want? What do we want to do as souls? And when we ask our souls, we realize our souls want to grow and contribute to the world. One of the most important things which our soul wants to do is, before we die, we want to leave the world a better place than we found it. That's why we really want to become a father and a mother and bring up, kids and try and contribute to the world so much. So it's really important that we're in touch with what our soul wants, not just with what our brain wants. And that's when now when we make dua for the things which our soul wants, now we can expect our duas to show up, because we're actually making dua for the reason which Allah created us. Allah created you for a very important purpose. And when you spend some time to figure out what that purpose is and to fulfill that purpose, then you realize that you're actually going in the direction of your soul. Now your duas will manifest very, very quickly. So that's why I really like doing that dua course, man, with everyone, because I think we learn that our duas are so much closer to us than we sometimes think. And segment duas, just simply identifying the segment, identifying how Allah helps you, saying Bismillah, and at the end of it saying Alhamdulillah for whatever Allah helped you, it can really transform how powerfully our du'as kind of work. Gee, man, any questions on any of that so far? Was that just a simple recap? That was a simple recap of the last week, wasn't it? Gee, any questions? Any insights? Anyone learned anything which they hadn't learned before? Gee. No, nothing. Okay, chalo. I'll carry on then, inshallah. We'll come on to the Quran reading bit. The Colchester Islamic Community Center, mashallah, has taqwa is equal being fearful of Allah and protecting ourselves from the consequences of His disobedience. Mashallah, that's really nice, man. I think that's Dr. Suhail, I think. I'm not sure who's behind Colchester Islamic Community Center. But mashallah, that's a really it's really good, man, because I think just taking that time to try and write down whatever experience you're having, it will transform the experience. It will make it so much deeper for you. So for those of you that don't want to write on the chat, even if you just find a bit of paper and just write it down on a bit of paper next to you, or find a notes app or something, it really helps you understand. So I think what Colchester Islamic Community Center, whoever that is, has done is really, really, really good, man. Taqwa is equal being fearful of Allah and protecting oneself from the consequences of His disobedience. So we have the awareness there, and then when you realize that if I don't kind of act upon this awareness, if I become unmindful and I just do whatever I feel like, we become unconscious kind of thing, then that disobedience is what's going to cause us some problems. So when we bring taqwa back, that okay, the decision I'm going to make, it really should be with the awareness of Allah. That's really good, man. I think the more we try and understand this, the more deep we'll become. And again, I would definitely recommend just asking the question, what is taqwa? And answering with, I don't know. And that brings you into the state of being able to learn. Very good, thank you, Madhu. I'm Dr. Sulsan Ebaji, mashallah. Very good to have you, man. Very good to have you.
Habib.
Yeah.
May I add
yes, please.
On this point, actually, I have a group from Turkey, and we are discussing the Quran chapters and Sa'at in Turkish, and we found that the Quran is working with the questions. When you don't understand the meaning, just ask it. And then the answer is coming.
True, man. I have to agree with that, man.
Yes,
man.
It is
So
working with the question.
So yeah, Jazakallah, Sister Golson, that's really true, man. So even the very nature of the Quran, Sister Golson is saying that the very nature of the Quran is very often very rhetorical. like أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنِ. And then, for example, even verses like summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarjun, they're blind, they're deaf, they're dumb, like they're kind of unable to perceive. And very often the reason we perceive so less is because we're just unattentive, because we don't pay much attention. So one of the ways that we're able to pay attention to the things we're usually missing is to ask the right questions. So what is it that we're missing? Like, what is it that our soul wants? What do we want? What's actually going on around us? And even just, that's why it's so powerful to look at simple things. Like just, Allah says, look at the way that I've created the sky, and look at the way rain falls from the sky, and look at trees, and look at the way Allah's created fruits, and look at your own bodies. Like look at how Allah's created your body. And very often it's these simple kind of things which actually up our awareness, rather than very complex like mathematical equations sometimes. But that's very important. So very often it's just asking the question and going into a curious state of mind and actually just asking the question, and then letting the answers actually come from something which is bigger than you. So anyway, man, so we'll go into the body for a bit, man. Just remember to breathe. Notice your breath, notice where your breath is. We'll do this together, man. So just breathe in through your nose and see how far in you can breathe. See if you can breathe into your lungs. See. And this time just noticing the breath, realizing that it's not so much about you breathing so much, it's just about you noticing the breath. Good, that's important. And just bring some gratitude for all of your senses actually. And noticing your sense of sight, maybe the fact that you can see. See if you can look at, if you're looking at me or if you're looking at the slide, just notice the words. And rather than staring or trying to kind of work it out so much, just bring awareness to your sense of sight and the fact that you can see it. And just take in the words as opposed to kind of looking at them so intently. And now when you're listening, try and listen to my voice. See if you can hear my voice. And see what else you can hear. Just see what's in your sense of hearing at the moment. Don't be so like desperate to listen to my words or listen to the next thing which I'm going to say. Just allow your sense of listening to be there and see what comes in. Good. Anyway, man. So remember to breathe in. Notice where your breath's coming. And we'll start with the dua for getting rid of the Quran, man. Not getting rid of the Quran. Getting rid of shaitan. Don't want to get rid of the Quran. The dua for getting rid of shaitan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Remember to breathe. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Good. Remember to concentrate on the words. It's really important to bring your attention and your focus to the words here. So you can turn the chat off now. You don't have to concentrate on the chat. Make sure you're concentrating on the words of Allah. So Bismillah. Then remembering to breathe and remembering your breath's going to be forming the words. So with the meme is from the lips. Millah. Bismillah. You remember to breathe. Hirra. allowing time for the ra. Ra. So it's the one letter in the Arabic alphabet where your tongue rolls. So remember to breathe. Ra, ra. Notice it roll. It has to roll. You take your time on this. Ra. Hirra. Good. Remember to breathe. And just the ra again. Ra. Okay. Hirra. Good. Hirrahma. Good. And keeping your attention on the letters, please. Remember to breathe. Hirrahma. Good. And now, same thing. Remember to breathe. Bismillah. Bismillahirrahman. Good. Remember to breathe. Nirra. So there's the last bit. Remembering just to breathe. Remember the ra rolls. No tension on the ra. Just breathe. Ra. Ra. Get rid of the unconsciousness, man. This is not scary. Nirra. Good. And allow your tongue to stay relaxed on the ra. Nirra. Good. Remember to breathe. Nirra. Now we come to the ha. Him. Him. Good. Rahim. So you're getting rid of unconscious energy here, please. So a lot of you, most of you, probably all of you, will have some kind of unconscious energy around the ra, because it's a hard letter to say. So remember to breathe and keep your consciousness on the ra. Try not to run away from it in any way, shape or form. Nirra. So go into it, give it time. Nirra. Him. Good. Remember to breathe. Nirrahim. Rahmanir Rahim. Good. Bismillahir Rahman. Rahmanir Rahim. Good. And now just noticing the breath when it comes in. Remember, it's actually got nothing to do with the breath. You don't need to force the breath at all. Just notice your breath and notice the letters. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Good. And remember to breathe once more. I'm just going to practice it once more as the first verse of Surah Fatiha. Remember to breathe. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Good. And we're going to do Surah Fatiha, yeah? So it's going to be repetition. It's a spiritual exercise. We're going to be noticing the unconscious energy around the letters. Alhamdu. Good. The ha is hard. So most of you will have unconscious energy. Remembering to breathe, and it's going to come from the throat. Ha. Relaxing into it, not running away from it. It's not that hard. It's actually very easy when you focus on it. Ha. Ha. Noticing it come from the throat. Ha. Smiling. Ha. Good. Ha. Good. Ham is joining onto the meme. Ham. Ham. Do. Hamdu. Good. Remembering to breathe. And just now bringing the consciousness to the first syllable. I don't know why everyone loves skipping the first syllable. It's very important. And it's important because this is where we're going to anchor our consciousness onto. Yeah, so al, a, simple sound, a, and then the lam sound, al. Remember to breathe. Al, ham, do, hamdu, alham, alhamdu. Good. Now breathe. It's going to be easy. Alhamdu. Smile. Lillahi. Lillahi. Lahi. La. Listening to the lillah. So you should be able to hold the lam sound. As you can see, the lam has a shadda. Yeah. Lillahi. The best thing to do right now is try and practice as much as you can and get as uncomfortable as you can, because obviously if you've not done this before, then you're going to find it strange. Lillahi. It's good to get into the letter. Don't run away from the letter. A lot of us, we have a tendency to run away from the letter. This is very often the biggest problem. So get into the state. Lillahi. Good. Now breathe. Lillahi. Now with your breath. Lillahi. Okay, I would recommend not sending messages at the moment. Trying to concentrate on the letters. G. Really bringing attention to the letters. Lillahi. G. Full attention. See if you can think of nothing else apart from the letters. Lillahi. This is the name of Allah. So bring your attention. This is for Allah. Lillahi. So now remembering to breathe. Actually breathing, focusing on your breath. Noticing that we're going to have to focus on your breath. Notice your breath coming through your nostrils. Lillahi. Good. Really important. Bring your attention back here. For those of you that have got distracted and are now started thinking about other things, bring your mind back and we're going to focus back on the letters. It's not bad to get distracted, it's normal. Most of you would be quite distracted. But try and bring as much focus as you can to the letters. And practice with your own, as loud as you can as well. Alhamdu. Good. Lillahi. Alhamdulillahi. Good. Now we're moving on to the Ra again. Ra. Ra. Rabbil. Smiling. Rabbil. Gee, practice, man. Practice as much as you can. As much as your lip movement you get going, the louder you're reading and the more that you're actively getting engaged. That's how much you're going to learn from this session. Gee. Ra. Rolling your tongue. Tongue has got to roll loudly. Ra. G. Then coming on to the ba. B. B. Lip letter. Bil. Rabbil. G. Remembering to breathe. Rabbil. Rabbil. G. Moving the lips properly. If you're not moving your lips, you're not going to be able to understand this at all. Rabbil. So if you can see my lips, try and copy the lip movement. So going from round to flat. Rabbil. And then coming on to the lam. So try and get really good at these letters. So instead of running away from the letters, which is very often what we tend to do, really just getting comfortable with saying the letters again and again, and really just flowing with the letters. Rabbil. Good. And then this comes from the throat. Rabbil. Good. Alameen. Remembering to breathe. Lameen. Alameen. Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillahi. رب العالمين. Gee, full concentration, man. For those of you that have got distracted again, don't worry. But just trying to keep your attention on the letters. So remembering to breathe. And all we're going to do this time is just bringing attention to each of the syllables. Yeah, so you're not trying to force yourself to not think about anything. You're just bringing your attention to the individual syllables, yeah? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Good. This time with even less thinking. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Guys, remembering to follow your breath in, follow your breath out. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And seriously thanking Allah for being your caretaker. The meaning of this, all praises for Allah. We bring our gratitude back to Allah. And then we realize that Allah created everything. Everything in the world is all being created by Allah. So all praises for Allah, who's the caretaker of all the worlds. He's our caretaker right now, looking after us right now. Everything that we have going on in our lives, it's only because we have to be grateful to Allah for everything that we have. The gratitude just goes to Allah. It's so important for us to be grateful to Allah for it. Sometimes we forget that. We become so self-centered, so self-controlling. That's why Surah Fatiha is so powerful. So we started off with the dua, where we got protection from shaitan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. We get protection from shaitan. Shaitan's not going to be distracting us. He's not going to be, making us do other things. He's not going to just invade our thoughts by giving us so many whispers. Then we come on to Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, where we take the help of Allah. We take the name of Allah. Bismillah. We take the name of Allah. And then we know that when now we're going to come on to reading the Quran, Allah's going to help us. And because He's Rahman, He's merciful, and He's Rahim. Like His mercy doesn't have any limits. It's always there for us. And then Alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks is for Allah, who's the caretaker of everything in all the worlds. So that's how we kind of actually are able to appreciate the true power of Surah Fatiha. So I definitely, for those of you that haven't been doing the YouTube courses, so on my YouTube channel, there's a course called Enhancing Salah Part 1. And that's something which will continuously allow us to actually improve our awareness of Allah and our concentration in our prayer, so that when we're praying, we're actually connecting with Allah in some kind of way. So that's something which just breaks it down. So it's a 2-week course, but it's basically it's 14 separate lessons, and you can do them whenever you want, really. But by starting them, you slow down and you bring your attention towards the letters, as opposed to trying to, what very often happens when we come to reading Quran and praying, we're just trying to get through the burden. So it reverses that process. So it's a very, very powerful course. And I definitely recommend everyone to try, especially for these last few days of Ramadan. Maybe we can aim to finish that course once. So it's 14 days. So if you can do 3 every day, half an hour, we'll be able to finish and actually have a good understanding of Surah Fatiha by the end of it. What I've noticed with a lot of people, what happens is we do the course once, and then we think, oh, I know this now. The problem is that when we're working with our spirit, nothing is really to do with information. And it's so important to be aware of that. It's not about information here. It's not about you knowing how to read Surah Fatiha. It's about the practice. There's a reason you pray 5 times a day. If it was about information, you wouldn't pray 5 times a day, because you know everything you're about to do. The magic happens when you go into your prayer, realizing that this is your activation for your spirit. When you open the YouTube course and you put your headphones in and you listen to that and you say, I'm about to read Surah Fatiha, like the most powerful verses of the Quran. And when you approach your learning like that, that's when you can expect the spiritual practices and activations to take effect. Because for Surah Fatiha to take its effect, you're going to have to take its power every time you read it. You're not reading it to get rid of a burden. You're reading it because it's your food for your soul. It's what brings your soul to life. So it's very important to be in touch with Surah Fatiha, man. I would definitely recommend the YouTube course. It will help you slow down and bring your attention towards the actual words, as opposed to kind of running away from it, which is something which very often happens when we're praying and trying to kind of get away with all our mistakes. So we stop being scared of our mistakes, and we bring curiosity. We say, I don't know how to read Surah Fatiha perfectly. Of course we don't. We've only just started. And then we come into the state of learning, and then we start going into the letters, and we start actually trying to learn the word of Allah, trying to get better at reciting the basics, which Allah tells us to read Surah Fatiha several times every day. In Ramadan, like hundreds of times. All the time we're reading it. There's so much power behind it. So it's important to be in touch with it, man. Really, really important. So I definitely recommend people, there's a few days left now of Ramadan. Today's going to be the 25th night. We've got a chance to really, really get into our worship. Like, it's not about just getting, a lot of people I know, they try and finish the whole Quran, and they try and, have races and do lots and lots of things. But it's not about doing lots and lots of things. It's about getting aware of Allah and connected to Allah. That's the end goal. When Allah said in the Quran that, why do you fast? Let's go back to that slide. Here's the verse of the Quran which makes you hungry because it's got dates on it. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Come on, why? What was the reason Allah gave for fasting? So that you get taqwa, so you get an awareness of Allah. So that you actually become somebody who's always connected with Allah. So that's the point of our fasting. The same with our prayer. It's meant to enhance our awareness of Allah. So therefore, if we're going to race through our prayer, we're really not going to be able to get the benefits. So I definitely recommend trying to come to Salah with a beginner's mind. And also doing that course on YouTube, which I've made, is called Enhancing Salah. And if you do that it will take you 2 weeks to go through, if you do 10 minutes a day. And that will make your Salah a lot more enhanced, basically. And we'll finish off with this dua, inshallah. So remember just to breathe. Let's come back. Sorry for shouting, everyone, man. I just thought I'd do a bit of a rant before we come to the end dua. So this is the dua for light. Yeah, and as we know, Allah is a light, and it's unlimited, this. Yeah, so when we ask for Allah for light, make sure you ask like with a generous mindset. Yeah, there's no limit to this. Yeah, so we'll start with Bismillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And it's useful to put your hand on the part of the body which we're asking for at the time. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you which part of the body we're asking for, and try and identify which part of your body that is. So, Allahumma ja'al fi qalbi nura, your heart. Yeah, so notice the body part. So if you can put your hand on that body part and actually feel where your heart is. Obviously Allah always speaks about the heart as the sense of perception, not the brain. And sometimes we don't understand that. So it's important to understand that. Allahumma ja'al fi qalbi nura. Oh Allah, please place light in my heart, awareness. And next one is going to be for foresight. Wa fi basari nura. And place light in my sight. Wa fi sam'i nura. And place light in my perception, in my hearing, in my ability to understand things. Wa an yamin. So an yamin is going to be right, then left. Wa an yamini nura. So place light to my right. Wa an yasari nura. And place light to my left. Then we're going to have above and below next. Wa fawqi nura, above me light. Wa tahti nura, and below me light. Then now we're going to have in front and behind. Wa amami nura. وخلفي نورا. You make sure you imagine these places, notice the light coming into these places. And then the last dua we make is for Allah to make us light. So now realizing, believing that there's no limit to Allah's light, and believing that Allah can give us whatever He wants, and we're worthy of receiving everything which Allah gives us. Realize that we will become fully illuminated by this dua. وَاجْعَلْنِي نُورًا. Good man, so this is the dua. We'll go through it, just the Arabic now. You can read along with me this time, yeah? So everyone ready? Remember to breathe. Allahumma ja'al fi qalbi nura, wa fi basari nura, wa fi sam'i nura, wa an yamini nura, wa an yasari nura, wa fawqi nura, وتحتي نورا وأمامي نورا وخلفي نورا واجعل لي نورا. Okay, that's the dua for light, man. Anyway, man, so today, alhamdulillah, we got back in touch with the point of Ramadan. We got back in touch with taqwa. We went through the MIQ for taqwa, and how taqwa applies to the three main parts of Islam, which is connecting yourself, connecting to Allah, connecting to the people around you. So how taqwa is really very important. And then we went into dua, why it's so important to believe that your dua is going to be accepted. That's why gratitude is so important. And then we recited Quran, and then we done the light dua. Anyway, man, that's it for today. Any questions? Chalo, man. Oh yeah, let me read through the chat, man. Let me read through the chat quickly. I know a lot of you put some stuff in the chat. Salman wrote a whole thing. Kasme Salman, let me read this. Okay, let's go with it. If any of you need to go, you guys can get going, man, inshallah. And I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow 6 o'clock. Try and come on time. If you come late, you miss out on a lot of good stuff, man, basically. So try and come on time, 6 to 7. And then we can finish on time if you guys can come on time. Just keep your mics off, yeah? Just keep your mics off. Just say assalamu alaikum. If you want to say salam in the chat, because I'm going to go through the chat with the people who have put their questions in. I found that dua course really useful, I have to say. I'd like to share an experience I've had lately. So pre-Ramadan I was struggling with a lot of topics on my maths degree, to the extent that I would spend hours and hours revising a certain topic and still being left confused. So basically annoying, man. But since Ramadan started, I realized something may be missing. I felt like I wasn't taking Allah's help even through my du'as. So as simple as it sounds, I started asking Allah to help me with my maths exams, and I could not have expected to experience what I've experienced. It's crazy, and I'm starting to understand stuff on my maths degree that I was struggling with so much before Ramadan. I feel like this isn't a coincidence, and it highlights that we're not just physical beings, but we also so man, that's too deep, man. We also need to be spiritually connected. I know this was long, but I hope it was helpful, inshallah. That was really good, man. MashaAllah. I don't know, that's a really good share, man. MashaAllah. I think everyone else has probably read it as well. I think I should read it again, because I think it's actually, let me read it a bit slower. I found the dua clause really helpful, I have to say. I'm going to share an experience I've had lately. So pre-Ramadan, I was struggling a lot with many topics on my maths degree, to the extent I would spend hours revising and still be left confused. But since Ramadan started, I've realized something may be missing. I felt like I wasn't taking advantage of Allah's help even through my du'as. So as simple as it sounds, I started asking Allah to help me with my exams every day. And I could not have expected to experience what I experienced since then. It's crazy, but I'm starting to understand stuff on my maths degree that I was struggling with so much before in Ramadan. I feel like this isn't a coincidence, and it highlights how we're not just physical beings, but we also need to be spiritual connected. Qasmi, man. I think Salman should have actually said it. That probably would have been better. But mashallah, that was really good, man. Thanks, Salman, man. Chalo. And then Atif put, that's how not to mess up a test. I think when me and brother Imran had a little discussion, I think quite a while back, about du'as, when we first started doing the segment du'as, and actually making dua for just food or just a little segment, and really getting consciousness on that area. Some people said that dua is a really emotional thing, so they don't want to. Now this is a trick of shaitan, if I'm honest. Sometimes shaitan says that dua is a really deep thing and it's going to connect you to Allah, so it's like really important, it should just come spontaneously. And when I said no, get some clarity and write down your duas, there was a lot of resistance. Yeah, people are like, no, I don't want to do that, because shaitan tells us that we don't want it, because then you'll have clarity, you will know exactly what you're asking Allah for. And when you know what you're asking Allah for, that clarity is what will change your insight. That will change what you even make dua for. But that's why it's so important to actually just, like what Salman's done is really powerful, because he's just written down like how even something like studying is where dua can really, really be helpful. I was going to say, I think I've lost train of what I was actually saying there, sorry. But anyway, man, thanks Salman, man. Let me just go through. Oh yeah, so what very often happens is we don't actually get very direct with our dua and the outcome. So people wouldn't make dua for having like a really good, like, oh Allah, I'm about to study for the next 60 minutes. Please let me concentrate like I've never concentrated before. And when you make a dua like that, that dua very often gets accepted. I think that's kind of what we can see from Salman's share, is when you are very direct, like I need help with this thing. This is the thing I need help with. Then if you're clear on what you need help with, and that thing which you need help with is something which is good, you're not planning, you don't need help with robbing a bank, you need help with something important in your life, then when you're clear on your dua, the dua tends to manifest very, very easily. And I think that's something, that's one of the problems sometimes. We have all these like long duas for like 10 years in the future, but we forget to get clarity. So that's why I also do dua for focus. That's really good, man. Focus is really important, man, because if you don't have focus, obviously you're not going to be able to pray or study properly. So asking Allah for focus, and then Allah shows up. Now that's the way Allah can really show up, I think. Ji Salman, you might as well talk, man. Sorry, man. I'll let everyone say salam, man, for those of you that have been here. It was really nice to have the lesson. Alhamdulillah, we've got a lot of people here, man. Alhamdulillah. But Jazakallah everyone for sticking around. Any questions, anyone wants to jump in, man, you can all jump in, man. I'll stop talking, inshallah. Ji Abdul Hafiz, assalamu alaikum, brother Abdul Hafiz, how are you, man?
I'm really sorry I missed 2 days.
No worries, man. You don't need to be sorry, man. Alhamdulillah. It's good, man. You were here for the main dua bit where we kind of really got in touch with, making dua for a little segment. Did you get around to doing that much?
Yes.
Oh, alhamdulillah. So it's good to be able to really get clarity on those kind of du'as. Dr. Sahel says, assalamu alaikum, Sir Choksi, man. Nice to have you. Alhamdulillah.